Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and my fellow members of the Rebel Alliance. It is I, Alistair Crowley III, Deputy of Common Sense, and your valiant voice of treason. Today, a voice of liberty and justice cried out in terror and was suddenly silenced. Julian Assange, hacker, free speech advocate, creator of WikiLeaks, and one of the few people out there who genuinely spoke truth to power. He was arrested. Why is this? I can only speculate, but one thing remains certain. Those who challenge authority are neutralized, swiftly and without mercy. So, this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause. Well, why don't we go ahead and wade into this mess until we're up to our necks in bullshit. Renfield, launch the goddamn intro.
There is nothing wrong with your browser. Do not attempt to refresh the page. We are now controlling all that you see and hear. We control the horizontal and the vertical. We can delude you with 1,000 videos or expand one single frame to crystal clarity and beyond. We can shape your vision to anything our imagination can design. We shall control all that you perceive until we see fit to release you. You are about to experience the depths of depravity that reach from the folly of human pursuits to the deputy of common sense. Please stand by.
First, a little bit about the man behind the mythos. Julian Assange has always been a man who put his neck on the line to put those who abuse their power back in their place. Assange started WikiLeaks with the intent of revealing secrets which world governments seek to keep hidden. He is a modern-day Robin Hood, stealing from those in power and giving to the common man. The only difference is that Assange deals in something far more valuable than gold or jewels. He deals in information. As of 2015, WikiLeaks had published over 10 million documents and associated analyses, which Assange described as a great library of the world's most persecuted documents. And all of these were available to the public, free of charge. Assange wanted to make the world a better place. He was an advocate of freedom and justice for all. But of course, those in power do not like to be challenged. They sat in their ivory towers and they looked down upon Assange. They pronounced him a threat to the established order, and they needed him silenced. In 2010, they got their chance. WikiLeaks published the now infamous material leaked by Chelsea Manning, a former United States soldier who is also risking her freedom to provide you with knowledge that others would rather you didn't have. Exactly what kind of information is so dangerous that the US government deems it a threat to their iron grip over the country? Well, the collateral murder video to begin with. That video showed a truly appalling sight. It showed 2 American helicopters firing upon a group of 10 men, 2 of which were Reuters employees, there to photograph an American Humvee while it was under fire. The helicopters also fired upon a van that had stopped in the middle of the firefight to help the wounded. Good men stopped to help those in need. And what price was paid by these good Samaritans? 2 children were wounded, and their father was killed. 2 children are now grown and have spent their lives without the father who once tucked them into bed, all because of the continued greed of the U.S. politicians and their puppeteers in big oil. And it gets worse. The video of the Grenai airstrikes was evidence of the slaughter of 86 to 147 helpless Afghani civilians. America's selfish greed for oil snuffed out their lives like so many candles. You might as well have murdered them in their beds. I will address those in power for the first time in this video, but not the last. Do you hear me, you pusillanimous piles of petrified puke? Your greed and your lust for power kills people. And it doesn't matter how many of us you silence. We will continue to fight you until you prove to us that we no longer need to. Manning may have been given a presidential pardon, but rumors have surfaced about a second possible charge being levied against her that eerily but not surprisingly coincides with the arrest of Assange. And for those of you who say, "Who cares? He's just another Russian agent. Fuck him." Spare me. Let me say this quite clearly. You are all idiots. And you are all despicable. Assange is no fan of Trump, nor is he a puppet of Russia. He said that choosing between Trump and Hillary is like choosing between gonorrhea and cholera. He'd prefer neither. He further stated that both Trump and Hillary display a hostile attitude towards whistleblowers. Well, it seems that his fears were justified. During the election, Assange released emails from the DNC that showed evidence of the committee's plot to ruin any chance Bernie Sanders had of winning the nomination. On October 7th, Assange released over 2,000 emails, which came to be known as the Podesta emails. In these emails, Hillary Clinton explained her relationship with Wall Street, stating, and I quote, "Even though I represented people in finance and did all I could to make sure they continued to prosper, I called for the closing of the carried interest loophole and addressed skyrocketing CEO pay. So when I raised early warnings about subprime mortgages and called for regulating derivatives and over-complex financial products, I didn't get some big arguments, because people sort of said, 'No, that makes sense.' Let me translate that out of weaselese and into English. She has one face for the public and a different one for Wall Street. She is a lying, two-faced corporate shill. The end. The items I mention here constitute less than 1% of the forbidden knowledge Assange has quite literally sacrificed his freedom for. And yet, how has society repaid him? You call him traitor. You call him Russian agent. You call him alt-right. You call him Trump supporter. Well, irony is a bitch, because it looks like Trump did your work for you. Assange was taken into custody in London to face the possibility of extradition to the US, where he may end up facing execution for treason. That is how the world has shown its gratitude. Now for my personal thoughts. Julian Assange is a hero. He fought for decades to make sure that we all knew what our governments were doing behind our backs. He gave up the dream of a peaceful life so that we could have ours. He sacrificed his time, his money, and even his freedom to give us knowledge. He knew that an informed populace is a force to be reckoned with. And those in power knew this too. So they spent the last decade trying to make him disappear. And now they may at last succeed. Julian is as much of a hero as those who charge into battle on our behalf. For most of his life, Julian has been waging his own war, and it looks like he might lose. However, Julian does not stand alone. Many stand beside him as he faces down the entire world. Kyle Kulinski, host of Secular Talk, Mark Meikle, otherwise known as Count Dankula, Jeremy Hambley of The Quartering, and founder of ExclusivelyGames.com, Tulsi Gabbard, Congresswoman from Hawaii, and potential presidential nominee for 2020, Paul Parkey, co-host of the Deep Fat Fried podcast, and veteran of the bygone era of YouTube atheism. And last, but almost certainly not least, my personal hero, and the greatest YouTuber to ever grace this platform. Revere him, praise him, TJ Kirk, the amazing atheist. I'd like to thank every single one of you for doing the right thing. But since I'm a year into YouTube, this feels like an appropriate time to thank the one person for without whom I wouldn't be here. The person who helped mold me from a scared, lonely teenage boy into a confident man. This man is TJ Kirk. My life has been jumping from a series of frying pans into the fire and back again. I've been abused, locked up, and trapped inside my own head. I'm not gonna lie, the thought of suicide has crossed my mind in the past. Quite a lot, actually. But I'm still here. And the one person who gave me the strength to go on was you, TJ. You made me laugh. But more importantly, you made me think. I got through the hardest period in my life because of you and your videos. You even gave me the courage to start a channel of my own. Without you, I wouldn't be here. So thank you. Thank you for everything. I have the courage to stand against tyranny because I know that I don't have to face it alone. There are many who stand beside me, but there are also those who seek to undermine our efforts. There are people who would gladly destroy the many for the good of the few. Such people would revel in the imprisonment and possibly even the execution of Julian Assange. Even now, they rub their filthy paws with glee. To those who support the arrest of Assange, you are all despicable. You are vile, wretched, hate-filled bags of putrefied filth, and if any justice remained on this planet, you would all be struck dead where you stand. To paraphrase my favorite YouTuber and personal hero TJ Kirk, you are abominable turds in human shells, crusted with the crisp yellow kernels of cowardice and reeking of the acrimonious stench of decayed humanity. Your psyches are desolate wastelands, populated only by the hateful specters of your ideologically driven delusions of relevance and aptitude. What you are doing by cheering the downfall of Assange displays suicidal levels of stupidity. It is the single most idiotic thing I have ever seen in my life. At no point in your insane, half-baked attempts to justify your positions did you even come close to something that could even slightly be considered a rational thought. And everyone else will end up paying the price for your lack of vision. I award you no points. And if I wake up tomorrow and you slack-jawed buffoons have somehow mysteriously developed ALS, then I may have to admit that a God actually does exist. Because that's what I call divine justice and providence. Heart attacks won't suffice. You need to suffer. And now a word to the politicians who orchestrated this witch hunt. You may think that you've won. You may think that you've beaten us. But together, ordinary people can overcome their weaknesses. You won't silence us that easily. We are the Hydra. Cut off one head and two more grow in its place. You can't kill us. Our middle head is immortal. For our middle head is the concept of freedom, justice, and truth. Try as you might, you cannot silence an idea. Beneath this mask, there is more than flesh. Beneath this mask, there is an idea, and ideas are bulletproof. Finally, I address the average person in the audience. Fear us, or rally behind us as you see fit. We are the Black Knights. We of the Black Knights stand with all those who have no weapons to wield, regardless of whether they be on the left or the right. The governments of the world cowardly accused Julian Assange of treason, and they mercilessly imprisoned him. It is a wanton and meaningless act. We cannot stand by and allow such corruption to be carried out. They must be made to pay for their actions. I will not repudiate justice on a fair and level playing field, but neither will I tolerate a one-sided witch trial of the weak by the strong. The only ones who should judge are those who are prepared to be judged. Wherever oppressors abuse their power by attacking those who are powerless, we shall appear and stand in their path, no matter how mighty, how formidable our foe may be. Those of you with power, fear us. Those of you without it, rally behind us. We, the Black Knights, shall be the ones who stand in judgment of this entire world. Well, this looks like the end. Why don't I let you depart my castle and go home to your warm, flickering fires and soft, comfy beds. As you drift off to sleep, remember, one voice is enough to make sleeping giants wake up, to make armies put their hands up, and watch whole nations stand up. It's one belief, one spark, one faith, and one restart. And we can reboot the whole chart before it all falls apart. You can join me as a fellow voice of treason. United we stand, divided we fall. Alone, we are powerless. But if we stand together, no force on earth can stop us. Even if the entire world stands in our way, we will defy all who would stop us to grab hold of our path. just who the hell do you think we are? I'm the Deputy of Common Sense. I dispense swift justice to those who aren't so swift. All is not yet lost. Hope still remains. The more they tighten their grip, the more of us will slip through their fingers. And all it takes is one. Give them hell!
For God's sake, don't touch it.
Dad, what's wrong with the telly?
Good evening, London. Allow me first to apologize for
That's
this.
the emergency channel.
I do, like many of you, appreciate the comforts of the everyday routine, the security of the familiar, the tranquility of repetition.
Bloody hell.
I enjoy them as much as any bloke. But in the spirit of commemoration,
Who's that, Mum?
whereby those important events of the past, usually associated with someone's death or the end of some awful bloody struggle, are celebrated with a nice holiday, I thought we could mark this November the 5th, a day that is sadly no longer remembered, by taking some time out of our daily lives to sit down and have a little chat. There are, of course, those who do not want us to speak.
Let me think, just let
I
me think.
suspect even now, orders are being shouted into telephones, and men with guns will soon be on their way.
It's Chancellor Sutler.
Damn it.
Why? Because while the truncheon may be used in lieu of conversation, words will always retain their power. Words offer the means to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth is, there is something terribly wrong with this country, isn't there?
You designed it, sir. You wanted it foolproof. You told me every television in London.
Cruelty and injustice, intolerance and oppression. And where once you had the freedom to object, to think and speak as you saw fit, you now have censors and systems of surveillance coercing your conformity and
Cameras.
soliciting your submission.
We need cameras.
How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those who are more responsible than others, and they will be held accountable. But again, truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror. I know why you did it. I know you were afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, disease. There were a myriad of problems which conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense. Fear got the best of you, and in your panic you turned to the now High Chancellor Adam Sutler. He promised you order, he promised you peace, and all he demanded in return was your silent, obedient consent.
Inspector, you're almost through.
Last night, I sought to end that silence. Last night, I destroyed the Old Bailey to remind this country of what it has forgotten. More than 400 years ago, a great citizen wished to embed the 5th of November forever in our memory. His hope was to remind the world that fairness, justice, and freedom are more than words. They are perspectives. So if you've seen nothing, if the crimes of this government remain unknown to you, then I would suggest that you allow the 5th of November to pass unmarked. But if you see what I see, if you feel as I feel, and if you would seek as I seek, then I ask you to stand beside me 1 year from tonight, outside the gates of Parliament, and together we shall give them a 5th of November that shall never, ever be forgotten.